The adventurers stand on a craggy hilltop, the wind whipping around them as they overlook a desolated, scarred valley. The air is thick with a sense of foreboding, and an unnatural stillness pervades the landscape. Suddenly, the ground rumbles violently, sending loose rock tumbling down the slope. The noise grows, deafening as the earth splits open, with a sound like a mountain shattering. The colossal form of a creature emerges from its ancient prison. Dust and debris fill the air, obscuring the monster's full form, but the party catches a glimpse of its immense armored body. Scales like slabs of iron, claws like the size of trees, and eyes that burn with an ancient, malevolent intelligence. The creature roars through the landscape, a sound that shakes the very soul, as it throws off the remnants of the earth that once contained it. The sky darkens as if the world itself recoils from the creature's presence, and the adventurers feel a wave of raw, primal fear wash over them. The air vibrates with power as the creature takes its first steps into the world, each one sending shockwaves across the land, heralding doom. The party stands frozen, knowing that they are about to face the beast of legend, a force of nature that can turn entire kingdoms to ash with unstoppable wrath. Yes, today, my friends, we are talking about possibly the most dangerous creature through all of D&D, the Tarrasque. Hello and welcome to Dungeon Deep Dive, where we talk about all things D&D monsters, from monsters and their lore to their publication history, where they originated, and how you can use them in your D&D games. The Tarrasque is quite possibly the most feared and terrifying creature that ever inhabited the material plane in D&D. This ginormous turtle T-Rex stands at a lovely 50 feet tall and has a length of 70 whole feet. That's about the equivalent of 2 American school buses, just to put that into perspective. And it weighs around roughly 130 tons, which is the equivalent of a blue whale. This absolute behemoth of a creature is roughly the size of an ancient dragon and has 2 long horns extending from its massive head. It has a thick, spiked-like carapace armor sitting on its back that follows it down to its massive tree trunk-like tail with a wide, enormous, toothy maw. They do have small, beady-like eyes. I say small, they're probably compared, the size is probably compared to that of a small car or something. Its eyes are not the main method to find its prey, so even if you do manage to blind them, their hearing and sense of smell is so precise that blindness would not really affect it that much. Also, with their super duper thick hide, they have a resistance to almost all kinds of damage that you could think of. When you look at the Tarrasque and you see the destructive nature that it has, you would assume that this creature would be evil in alignment in some way. But that isn't true, because with them being not the most intellectual creatures, they don't really have a moral stance on the world. So their alignment is classed as neutral, because they are just a natural force. The history and lore of the Tarrasque in the D&D world has been nothing if not controversial. Most people living in the world of D&D would never know of the Tarrasque's existence, and for those lucky few that do know, don't even know where it fully originated. There have been rumors as to where it originated. Some believe that it was created by an evil cabal of wizards, but that was quickly dismissed. Others think that it was actually created by the primordial entities to possibly fight the gods. This does have little merit given its natural resistance to magic. Another theory, and one of the more fun ones for me, I think, is that they are actually aliens from a faraway planet and were teleported here either on purpose or by accident. Now, according to the deep tomes of D&D lore, there is a super secret rule where there can only be 1 Tarrasque at one time on the material plane, which I think is great. Imagine if you got 5 of these bad boys just rocking around, waking up at the same time. You might as well just end it there, because I'm sorry, there's no escaping that. The planet is gone at that point. It's a loss. Apparently the Tarrasque sleeps deep within the world's core, and apparently there is no way to predict when it will wake up for a little snack. This mutated Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles essence is tied so much to the prime plane that if it does happen to wake up, don't get your hopes up about slaying it. Instead, you will probably be best putting it back to sleep in the planet's core, or even better, finding a way to trick it into another plane for someone else to deal with. But you see, now this is where my dungeon master brain comes in, because I think, okay, if you send it to another plane, great, yours is saved. But if it sleeps in the planet's core, I would imagine that it would have to be an integral part of the planet's core stability. So with that gone, my brain goes, well, the planet could go into chaos, because then in my mind the core is now unstable because it doesn't have this natural force sitting in it. So I feel like this could be a great story plot to try and somehow lead the Tarrasque back into the core to save the planet from like imploding or something. Now, going over its publication history, the Tarrasque makes its first appearance in the 1983 first edition Monster Manual 2. The art in this book, to me, makes the Tarrasque look more like a demon-possessed turtle than the dinosaur-inspired art we see in 5th edition. The book says that the legendary Tarrasque is possibly the most dreaded monster of all, for when it is active, it ravishes the countryside for miles. All vegetation and animal life is devoured or driven away. The land through which the monster passes becomes a barren waste which requires years to recover, and the Tarrasque eats miraculously and continually, and all living things are food to it. In 1st edition, if your DM hates you enough to throw this creature at you and you were under level 3, you would automatically be paralyzed until it is out of your line of sight. So like, say if they wanted to throw a curveball at you and you're like level 2, you're just starting out, like, oh, it's going to be a good game. Bang, Tarrasque, you're just stuck there until it moves out of the way. And this thing is big, so it will be a while before it gets out of your line of sight. If you're a creature that is higher than level 3, you will just flee in panic. Although those of level 7 or more manage to save from the paralyzation will not be affected. It says that the armor of the Tarrasque is so strong that even spells like lightning bolt, magic missile and cone of cold will have no effect on the creature. And with the reflective nature of its armor, 1 in 6 attacks made on it will actually reflect back to the caster. So be careful when you're casting spells at this bad boy. In 1st edition, there is a way that the Tarrasque could actually be permanently killed. First, you have to get through its 300 hit points and get it down to almost 30 hit points, and then you will need to cast a wish spell to wish the creature permanently dead. You know, that's it, just use a 9th level wish, you know, no big deal. If this isn't done and even the smallest piece of the Tarrasque is left, it will over time fully regenerate back into a fully grown Tarrasque. I feel like if you're living in a D&D world that has a Tarrasque in it, you must be living in a constant state of fear. Even if a Tarrasque does wake up, it says in the book that it only destroys the surface for a week or 2 and then goes back to sleep in its underground lair. But it will only sleep for 5 to 20 months before waking up again. That's not a long time between sleeps. I don't see a world ever recovering in that time, with the Tarrasque constantly waking up and just stomping around and eating everything. Now, moving on to 2nd edition, we get a Tarrasque in the 1989 Monstrous Compendium Volume 2. We get a cheeky headshot of the spotlighted monster, but also look at the guy on the next page. The Tazloi, this guy's funky. I like him. Maybe we'll do a video on him in the future. The information in this book doesn't change all too much compared to the 1st edition, except the final paragraph where the text says that the Tarrasque has possibly been created by a long forgotten god to punish all of nature. The Tarrasque does get reprinted in the 2nd edition with some snazzy new artwork in the 1993 2nd edition Monstrous Manual. Moving on to 3rd edition, we get the long lost cousin to Godzilla in the 2002 3.0 Monster Manual. In this book, they are classed as a colossal magical beast, not monstrosities or abominations, but a magical beast. And it says they are possibly the most feared and dreaded monster of all time in D&D, and says that when the Tarrasque is active, most people will just run away and leave anything and everything behind rather than fight an unwinnable battle. If you're playing 3rd edition and you do actually attempt to fight this behemoth, then you are definitely in for a challenge. It has a DC 26 will save from its frightful presence. Also, if it goes for a bite, it can swallow and hold in its stomach 2 huge creatures, or 4 large creatures, 8 medium creatures, or 16 small or smaller creatures. And by if some miracle you manage to cut off a limb or a body part of the Tarrasque, don't get too excited, it will quickly regenerate in 1d6 minutes. So don't think that's a victory, because it ain't. The Tarrasque also gets its own section spewing out information on the ecology of the Tarrasque in the Dragon magazine number 359. In this magazine, we get a section where it mentions that some of the oldest written records are in items called speaking gems, and very few magically accomplished elves and human lore masters who can awaken such stones hear voices of elven dead from eons, telling tales so old that the worlds those speakers inhabited have themselves died, crumbling to dust around extinguished stars. It says there is one such gem where it could be describing the first appearance of the Tarrasque, directly quoting, "In a kingdom of elves, half-elves, humans, and halflings known as Erithtunar." I'm probably butchering that. "This is its tale. The starfall shield gleamed and sparkled day and night. the mightiest spellcrafting Eothkar had never seen. A wall of devouring magic to keep the Orgog and the gnawing ones out. That the valiant strength of our land not be sapped in ceaseless fighting against such marauding monsters. There was much rejoicing and wonderment at the titanic achievement, particularly after the fell of dragon Larau Thun sneeringly dived into the starfall, only to be caught, held frozen, and slowly melted away. Despite every magic that the worm hurled, truly the starfall was a barrier beyond compare. Yet at the rising of the third moon after the crafting of the starfall, something emerged from the dark woods in its most remote location, in an area known as Rondriel, an elf in tatters with a shattered arm, so wrecked with pain that he could scarcely shuffle. He appeared out of the dying sparks of a far stride spell to grasp out that Rodriel was gone, devoured with all his household by a gigantic thing, a beast of great jaws that tore through castle towers and hill tomes with ease, hurling down Rodriel castles and the town of Fondere around it. I am butchering all these names today. Rondriel is laid waste, he said, for the creature ate every shining knight who rode against it without pause or prudence. As it stalked on down the road, devouring every elf, horse, house cat and passing beast in the hamlets of Torrent, Aldriel's gates, Narnath, and Luel's tomb. I fled before it, and in the market town of Oranugalog. I don't know how to say that. Oranungala, let's say that. Only just found time enough to prepare the far stride casting that brought me here. As it gnawed and clawed its way through the buildings towards me, dashing down shops and turreted mansions alike with great sweeps of its tail, a hail of arrows that hurled against it, and a bright lance of brilliant Arban knights, and it ignored them all and smashed the others with its talons, eating the remnants. So much I saw before my magic snatched me away. Now in the bright court of... God, these names, dude. These names. Shelarelif. Now in the bright court of Shelarelif, High Queen of everything. High Queen of Erentiel. I am. Don't listen to these names. All right, these names are. I'm gonna class these names as irrelevant because I'm just mispronouncing each and every single one. Tall and wise courtiers scoffed at this tale. Their swift spells told them that the one in utter tatters truly believed what he said, but they held that he must have been driven mad or even enspelled to see things far from the truth. Yet no sooner had they dismissed his words than the chamber where the Fast Rider appeared rocked at the arrival of a fair elven knight in scorched and riven armor, whose pleas for aid were shouts none could ignore. From Lauthun this one came, and he cried that they had seen, oh my god, Orangular torn apart and toppled from afar, and mustered all the battle might of Lauthund, mages and sword wielders alike, to make war on whatever had hurled down at this place. Who created this place? Who created this name? I need to Google it. How to say... Go on, how are we going to say that?
Orange.
That's not it! For it hurled down Oranglular. The great beast they saw stalked towards them like a wingless dragon, larger than any seen before, ponderous and slow. At first they could scarcely believe that this one beast, however monstrous, could alone have been the bane of Ugranglular. Yet they hurled their spells at it and rode at it with lances and swords, sought to pierce it with volleys from their great bows, and even spell hurled savage monsters into its path to force it to fight them. Even great dragons. Nah, didn't work. But the great beast devoured and slew and prevailed, laying waste to all before it, until it came at last to Lauthond and breached its walls and started to hurl it down. Thousands of elves perished fighting it, and even more fled, this night among them. This time the wise courtiers looked troubled and did not scoff when this sorry knight warned them that the bright court could not be saved, and perhaps not even Eritrea itself. War trumpets blared and spells cried warnings afar, calling all the mailed might of Aeonthear to fight I'm just making it up now, to fight this one foe. Yet even as the realm rose up in alarm, swords flashing and great beasts strode out of ribbon of Luthand and into the nearest mountain, into it, sinking down into the solid stone as a swamp snake glides down inky waters. As suddenly as it came, the great beast was gone. That was a lot harder to read than I thought it was going to be. That took a lot for my brain. Now moving on to 4th edition, we get the Tarrasque in the 4th edition monster manual under the Abomination entry, and I must say, this is some of the most badass art of the Tarrasque I think I've ever seen. It is described as a terrifying embodiment of war-torn destruction. The Tarrasque attacks without motivation or purpose unless the purpose is to obliterate all life. The absolute aura of this guy radiates when it's awake is crazy. First off, in 4th edition, it has 1,420 hit points and it has an AC of 43. We're just going to go through this one ability that it has right now in 4th edition because it's kind of crazy. It has an ability called Earthbinding, where any flying creature in the aura has its flying speed reduced to 1 and the maximum altitude reduced to 20 feet, putting it within the reach of a Tarrasque. Any creature above the altitude at the end of its turn falls to the altitude of 20 feet automatically. So if you're an Aarakocra or you're flying on a broom, be ready to take some hits because you're going to be right in its range. Its attacks have a bloody plus 34 to hit. That's some loopy numbers right there. Also, something to note, this is the first time where it does not actually have a regenerative ability. Look at that. Good to know. This does seem to be the only publication of the Tarrasque in 4th edition, however, so let's move on to 5th edition. This spiky beauty is that much of a terror in the D&D world that it gets a whole page of art dedicated to it. Now that is an aura. It says in the manual that the Tarrasque is such a legendary creature that some cultures actually incorporate it into the official religious doctrine, combining its unpredictable appearances into stories of divine judgment and wrath. This is one of the very few monsters through all of D&D where, from what I can find, there is no official information on the actual origin of the Tarrasque, and I love that. It keeps a little bit of mystery, and I do love a good mystery. But if you guys end up finding something like that and I sound like a fool now saying this, please do let me know in the comments. Thank you. Okay, so now we've gone over the history of the Tarrasque and its publication history. Now let's go over the 5e stat block and the 2024 stat block, as well as one little homebrew variant that I've come up with just to spice your games up a little bit if you truly hate your players. Starting out with the 5e stat block, this is classed as a gargantuan monstrosity, also classed as a titan, with an unaligned alignment, and it has an armor class of 25 and just a minor 676 hit points, nothing too crazy. It has a speed of 40 feet with damage immunities to fire, poison, bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing from non-magical attacks, as well as a condition immunity to charmed, frightened, paralyzed, and poisoned. It has a blind side of 120 feet, so like we said before, even if it does go blind, it doesn't really affect the creature that much. And it has a challenge rating of 30. The only other monster in the CR that has a level 30 rating is Tiamat, the actual god of the chromatic dragons. It gets 3 legendary resistances that can use once a day, as well as a magic resistance giving it advantage on saving throws against spells and other magical effects. It has an ability called Reflective Carapace, where at any time the Tarrasque is targeted by a magic missile spell, a line spell, or a spell that requires a range attack, the DM rolls a d6. On a 1 to a 5, the Tarrasque is unaffected, but on a 6, the Tarrasque is unaffected, and the effect is reflected back at the caster as though it originated from the Tarrasque, turning the caster into the target. It is also classed as a siege monster, so this little beauty deals double damage to any and all objects and structures it comes across. I don't think hiding in a house is going to work because it ain't. Now for its actions, it has a multi-attack where it can use its frightful presence. It then makes 5 attacks, 1 with its bite, 2 with its claws, 1 with its horns, and 1 with its tail. And it also can use its swallow instead of its bite. The bite has a plus 19 to hit with a reach of 10 feet and deals 4d12 plus 10 piercing damage. And if that target is a creature, it is then grappled with an escape DC of 20 Until this grapple ends, the target is restrained and the Tarrasque can't bite another target. The claws have the same, a plus 19 to hit, but has a 15-foot reach and deals a nasty 4d8 plus 10 slashing damage. And the massive horns on its head have the same plus 19 with a 10-foot reach, and they deal 4d10 plus 10 piercing damage. It does get another attack with its tail that has a 20-foot reach and deals 4d6 plus 10 bludgeoning damage, and if the target is a creature, it must succeed on a DC 20 saving throw or be knocked prone. Now, naturally, being the monster that it is, it obviously has a frightful presence attack where each creature of the Tarrasque chosen within 120 feet and aware of it must succeed on a DC 17 wisdom saving throw or become frightened for 1 minute. Any creatures affected can repeat the saving throw at the end of each of its turns, with disadvantage if the Tarrasque is within sight, ending the effect on itself on a success. If the creature's saving throw is successful or the effect ends on it, the creature is immune from the Tarrasque's frightful presence for the next 24 hours. And finally, for its final action, it has a swallow action where the Tarrasque can make one bite attack against a large or smaller creature it is grappling. If the attack hits, the target takes the bite damage, the target is then swallowed, and the grapple ends. While swallowed, the creature is blinded and restrained and has a total cover against attacks and other effects outside of the Tarrasque. But it does take 16d6 acid damage at the start of each of the Tarrasque's turns. That's a lot of damage. If the Tarrasque, however, does take 60 damage or more on a single turn from the creature inside it, the Tarrasque must succeed on a DC 20 con save at the end of that turn or regurgitate all swallowed creatures, which fall prone in a space within 10 feet of the Tarrasque. If you manage to kill the Tarrasque, a swallowed creature is no longer restrained by it and can escape from the corpse by using 30 foot of movement and exiting prone. And finally, with it being a legendary creature, it gets 3 legendary actions it can use each round. It has an attack action where it can make one claw attack or a tail attack. It can use an action to move up to half its speed, and at the cost of 2 actions, it can make one bite or a swallow action. Now for the 2024 stat block, it has the same AC of 25 with an initiative count of 18, but it has a little bit more hit points. It has 697 hit points. That's around about 30 more than the 2014 version. It has a speed of 60 feet, a burrow speed of 40 feet, and a climb speed of 60 feet. I don't know what this thing's going to be climbing. This thing is huge. What is it going to be climbing that's bigger than it? There is nothing bigger than this thing. It gets a resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, slashing from both magical and non-magical, and is immune to fire, poison, charmed, deafened, frightened, paralyzed, poisoned. Unlike in 2024, it has 6 legendary resistances instead of 3, but has the same magic resistance, reflective carapace, and siege ability. For its actions, it has a multi-attack where it can make one bite attack and 3 other attacks, using a claw or tail in any combination. The bite has the similar modifier to hit as well as the damage and DC checks, but it gains an additional 5 feet reach, making its bite to have 15 feet. Nothing changes for the claw attack, but the tail now has a reach of 30 feet instead of 20. And it does lose its horn attacks and frightful presence, but it does get a rechargeable action called Thunderous Bellow. We're on a recharge of a 5 or a 6 and a con save of 27. Each creature and each object that isn't being worn or carried in a 150 feet cone takes 12d12 thunder damage, and the target has the deafened and frightened condition until the end of its next turn, but you only take half damage on a success. When it comes to the swallow attack it had in the 2014 stat block, it is now moved to a bonus action instead of an action in the 2024 stat block. And again, it has 3 legendary actions that it can use each round, but only has 2 actions this time. It has an action called Onslaught where the Tarrasque can move up to half its speed and then make a claw or a tail attack. And it has another called World Shaking Movement where the Tarrasque moves up to its speed, and at the end of the movement the Tarrasque creates an instantaneous shockwave in a 20-foot area originated on itself. Creatures that are concentrating on a spell lose their concentration, and if they are a medium or small, they have the prone condition. But the Tarrasque can't take this action again until the start of its next turn. Now for the homebrew variant I've made. Now I had this idea where centuries ago the Tarrasque was tricked into stumbling into a portal to the plane of fire, and while it was trapped in there, its body became infused with the plane's fire itself, turning the skin into a hard molten rock with veins of fire and lava throughout its body, and eyes like 2 burning suns. I've kept the AC at 25 because I feel like 25 is a good like benchmark for a DR 30 monster. But I gave it a little bit more hit points. I gave it 740 because, you know, why not? Why not at this point? All right, we can't. The Tarrasque naturally just goes off the rails anyway, so why not just go further off the rails and give it more HP? It has saving throws in strength, con, and wisdom, and I gave it a vulnerability to cold because, you know, I don't hate my players too much, you know what I mean? I want to give them something to try and figure out. It has roughly the same stats as the base monster with 6 legendary resistances to use a day, and I gave it a trait called Fire Colossus, where any creature that touches the Tarrasque or hits it with a melee attack within 10 feet of it takes 6d6 fire damage. For its actions, it has a multi-attack where the Tarrasque can make 5 attacks, 1 with its bite, 2 with its claws, and 1 with its horns or tail in any order. The bite, claw, horns, and tail attack all deal the base amount of damage as well as additional fire damage on top of it. I gave it a recharge action called Magma Stomp, where the Tarrasque slams the ground, creating a shockwave of molten rock. Each creature within 60 feet must make a DC 27 dexterity saving throw, taking 20d6 fire damage and falling prone on a failed save, or half as much damage on a successful one. The area then becomes difficult terrain from the cooling lava that the Tarrasque threw up from the ground. And for the legendary actions, it can attack as an action, it can move up to half its speed, and at the cost of 3 actions, it can use a new ability called Eruption, where the ground within 60 feet of the Tarrasque erupts in flames. Each creature in the area must make a DC 25 dexterity saving throw, or take 12d6 fire damage on a failed save, or half as much on a successful. I would be lying if I said I haven't been looking at Tarrasque minis the entire time while I've been writing this. This monster is a true endgame entity for a final winning battle or a final last stand for a group of heroes. There could be a cult dedicated to the Tarrasque, similar to like the cult of dragons dedicated to Tiamat, who are obsessed with releasing the Tarrasque, believing they have the power to control its power. Or if you want to use the Homebrew stat block, you could do the party is venturing through the elemental plane of fire for some story reason. Maybe they're in the city of Brass looking for something or just wanting to pay a visit, when suddenly the city alarm bells begin to ring and it begins to get attacked by the Tarrasque that is trapped in the plane and bound with pure power from the plane. But that is all I have for you guys today on the Tarrasque. Thank you all for watching. I hope you found this video helpful, and if there's anything I've missed, I would love to hear about it in the comments below. If there's any monsters that you would like me to cover, please write them in the comments, and if I pick that monster, I will add your comment into that video. If you've enjoyed the video, drop a like on it, drop a cheeky sub if you haven't. It helps more than you realize. Thank you all for watching again, and I will see you all in the next video.